stand by while NCLA cuts through the noise to signal abuse of administrative power. This is Administrative Static with Mark Chenoweth and John Vecchione.
Welcome to Administrative Static with John Vecchione and Mark Chenoweth. We are delighted to have a special guest with us today from the Federalist, Margot Cleveland. Welcome to Administrative Static.
Thanks so much, gentlemen.
Well, so Margot is the Federalist's senior legal correspondent, and she's been a contributor to a number of other publications. If I went through the whole list, I think we would run out of time to talk with her about our topic today. But I think I should mention that she is a graduate of Notre Dame Law School. She taught there for many years, and she served for nearly 25 years as a permanent law clerk for a federal appellate judge on the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. And the reason that we asked her on the program is that she had an article yesterday in the Federalist, "Don't Miss the Most Damning Durham Finding." So, Margot, what is the most damning finding of the Durham Report?
Sure. So the most damning finding was not everything that they did that was wrong, but that Durham has seen a corruption of the hearts and the minds of the FBI and the DOJ. And as he notes, that if the FBI does not actually ingrain in their hearts these principles of fidelity, bravery, and integrity, and the idea that they're to protect the American people and uphold the Constitution, no reform will help. And that was something I think that a lot of people missed in going through the Durham Report. There were so many details, so much minutia, that I think people didn't step back and say, well, what was his kind of assessment? What's his diagnosis? How do we fix it? And his answer was terrifying. His answer was basically, we can't fix it. The fix is a fix of hearts and minds of those people in the Bureau and at the Department of Justice.
Right. And so let me take a step back, because we may have some listeners who have not been following this as closely as all of us have. So the Durham Report is the report issued by Special Counsel John Durham. And what exactly was he investigating? What was he charged with looking into?
So he was charged with looking into the investigations around the 2016 presidential election. And while most people thought that meant Crossfire, Hurricane, and Trump, it wasn't merely that. It was also looking at kind of the dog that didn't bark, the investigations that didn't take place regarding Hillary Clinton around that time. So there was a referral about the Clinton plan to, kind of prompt this Russia collusion hoax that was not looked into. There were people connected with Russia and Hillary Clinton that were not looked into. So broadly speaking, it was any investigations that were undertaken by DOJ and the FBI and the 2016 election. And those were the two main prongs. It was what they did to Trump and what they didn't do to Hillary.
And is everything that Durham investigated things that happened under the watch of James Comey when he was the head of the FBI?
No. Actually, while it started under Comey, it continued under Special Counsel Robert Mueller, and it continued then under Christopher Wray. So this went back from 2016 way into 2020, and it wasn't just Comey. Although Comey was a big problem that was highlighted, this was what was kind of moving this train, which British intelligence said in the report, it was quoted in the report as basically saying this train was going. There was no stopping it, and it was coming from the higher-ups. And who was the high-up doing it? It was Comey.
So do you think it's fair to say that John Durham discovered the mother of all double standards in terms of the decision-making that the FBI and or DOJ was making about whether to, what to investigate and when?
Right. I would say the mother, the aunt, the sister, the grandmother, because there were so many scandals and issues that should have been investigated about Hillary, the Democrats. I would even throw in the Brookings Institute. If you read the report, what they were saying is those were things that if you applied the standards that went after Trump and the Trump campaign, all of that would have been investigated. At least they would have had the first steps to an investigation, whether or not they found anything, but they didn't. What they did is they went after Trump, and every step of the way, when they should have shut down the investigation, they didn't. They continued to get more and more evidence that showed there was no there, and yet they plodded along.
Some of the things that I had seen earlier, and I should disclose, I have not had time to read the Durham Report yet. I've read your article and some of the other articles I've read about it, but I haven't read the report itself yet.
300 and some odd pages.
It's there's a lot of it there for those who are interested. It's probably beach reading for the summer for me. But what are some other takeaways that folks should that maybe don't have time to read the report should keep in mind, or what should what else in it concerns you? I know that's a big question. But
and there are a ton of takeaways, and some of them are kind of ones that you have to be in the weeds to understand. And what I mean by that is this whole plot was so deep and so many strands to it that I literally keep finding more things from the report that are significant. And that's going to be hard for the public to want to even get into. But I think one big takeaway that we can look at it globally is the press's involvement as well as the Democrats' involvement in it. So we saw the FBI acting either totally incompetently or totally corruptly, depending on your view. And I think Durham was pretty clear here that I'm not going to be able to prove any of this. This goes down to motive. Did they knowingly do it? So you have kind of the three prongs. We've got the FBI having made mistake after mistake after mistake. And one of the things that I'm doing after doing a quick read is I'm literally going through it, and I've got a chart of, okay, how many things did the FBI screw up? And that's getting pretty darn long. So that's one big takeaway. They were either corrupted or incompetent, and both of them are horrible. Second big takeaway was that the Democrats were in this from the beginning and in so many ways, and everything that they accused Trump of, they did. It wasn't a Russia-Trump collusion. It was a Hillary-Russia collusion. And we have this because the primary subsource was a Russian who was feeding Steele this fake intel that then was used to spy on innocent Americans. And then kind of the third bucket of big takeaways is the media. There's this one passage where Durham notes that everything in a New York Times article was false. I think that they received a Pulitzer for something.
I was going to say a Pulitzer Prize-winning article, maybe.
Yeah, probably. But to me, I kind of chuckled because it was I would say almost passive aggressive, but it didn't come off that way. It was just kind of off the cuff that everything in this article was false. And it was in the context of things that the FBI knew and yet continued to push on. So those would be the three big buckets, but then within each one of those, there are so many details that you could look at where the FBI screwed up. I also think another big picture item, and these are, I'm kind of giving you teasers to future articles, are what damage this did. Durham notes the cost because it's not just Crossfire Hurricane cost. It was the cost of the special counsel, Mueller, the cost of Durham. So you're seeing many of the mainstream media outlets talking about 4 years, and this is all they came up with. That 4 years was caused by Hillary Clinton and the Democrats. So we have the cost to the country there, but the cost was so much more than financial. This tore
Crippled the
people
beginning of the
apart.
Trump administration. I mean,
Right. Oh, right. So, yes, I should probably start there. It crippled not just the beginning, but the entire Trump administration. But it also destroyed the country in some ways. You had this pitting of right and left against each other, where the right is saying it's a hoax, and the left is no. This orange man
he's really
did
a
these
Russian
bad
asset.
things.
Yeah.
So, I think that the
And I
damage.
think it also I think it affects our foreign policy today. So people, if you look at Ukraine and you look at Russia, there are people who don't believe anything anymore.
Yes, thank you. That was actually going to be another point that I said. The Britain intelligence was laughing at us. I mean, we must have looked like Maxwell Smart to them, although I'm probably dating myself by making reference to that.
James Bond and Maxwell Smart live forever. Everyone knows.
Exactly. Right. So you have the foreign policy. I also, and I've said this before, that I'm not a libertarian. I'm a conservative. And when I've lived through this, it's almost like I'm clinging to my conservative roots because everything is trying to pull me into the libertarian camp, and I don't want to be there. But I think the FISA court.
You don't like Bitcoin?
But I think the FISA court is good and important, but I don't trust them anymore. And I think that the judges in maybe very important terrorism cases aren't going to trust the reports that are, the applications coming to them either. So, like you said, foreign policy, it's national defense, it's everything is influenced by this because no one trusts the DOJ or the FBI anymore.
We'll leave it there for now. We'll be back with another segment right after this. Welcome back to Administrative Static. In a testament to her integrity, which I had no doubts about, Margot let me know during the between segments there that she taught undergrads at Notre Dame. She attended the law school, but her teaching gig at Notre Dame was for undergrads, and she did not want me to mislead our audience. So, Margot, thank you for correcting me on that. I did want to find out from you, why should people care about this? I mean, I think those of us who've been following this very closely are dismayed that the mainstream media seems to be, rather than taking a lesson from this, they seem to be continuing in their role as flacks for the Democratic National Committee and the Hillary Clinton campaign. And here we are in 2023, 7 years after the election, and they're still sort of participating in the cover-up of something pretty horrible. But a lot of people might say, look, this was 2016. That's a long time ago. Can't we just put it all behind us?
And the FBI. That's who they're also doing it for.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. So I think that what it really comes down to is something that Durham said in his report. He actually closed his report out with this. This is why Americans should care. He's quoting Attorney General Levy, who was the Attorney General who came in after Watergate and was championed for instituting many reforms. And I actually think it's telling that Durham opened and closed by reference to the Attorney General post-Watergate, that it's kind of saying how horrible Durham saw the situation on the ground. So why should Americans care? This is how Durham ended his report. Attorney General Levy warned that nothing can do more to weaken the quality of life or imperil the realization of the goals that we all hold dear than our failure to make clear by words and deeds that our law is not the instrument of partisan purpose. So why should Americans care? Because when the law is used for partisan purposes, the entire rule of law falls apart. Americans no longer see justice as being blind and impartial. And justice doesn't just reach Trump and Biden. It is the small claims case. It is the judge who's deciding contract cases or employment cases. Rule of law undergirds everything in this country. And if the Americans can't trust the impartiality of our justice system, our entire foundation is going to crumble. But I would also add to that how you opened the question about the press is continuing on with the, they went from it being fake news to now it's old news. They're not covering this. They should be shocked. And that if the press is not doing its job, how can our country possibly flourish? If the press, which was so important, it was in the First Amendment, is not reporting for the people can't trust anything. So really, there's two things that why people should care, but they both come down to the future of our republic.
I am seeing on Twitter and elsewhere, even from some of my friends, that look, the Mueller report, Mueller got all these convictions, and Durham got a plea of a guy who's now who's practicing law, the guy who altered the FISA subpoena to the FISA court and basically changed it in falsity, is now practicing law in D.C. And so Durham doesn't have any scalps, and Mueller has scalps. So why is this? What is the pushback on that argument? Is what I'm getting.
Sure. So the first pushback is the convictions that Mueller got. One, had nothing to do with any such Russia collusion.
Exactly.
Two, I would say at least two of those convictions were fraudulently obtained, and I'm talking about George Papadopoulos, where they argued his lie was material. It wasn't. It's ridiculous. And Flynn with the same thing. It was a perjury trap that it was led to. And then you have, what did they do? They brought these showcases against the Russians, and then they dismissed them as soon as one of the Russian entities showed up. So I think you got to start with the premise that, no, he didn't obtain all these convictions. All that shows is that he didn't take what Durham said seriously, where Durham said, you don't prosecute unless you think you can win. You don't prosecute for political purposes. Durham was the kind of the upright of the two. He didn't, stick pit bulls on folks trying to demand. I go through the report, and that's another thing that I'm looking at is how many people did Durham think were lying to him? I think there were a bunch, but he didn't see a way to win the case. But beyond this really isn't about winning a criminal conviction. The investigation was to show what happened. And what happened? Did Trump collude with Russia? No. Did the FBI peddle the Russia collusion hoax? Yes. So the bottom line is,
Margot, half the people still think that the Russian collusion hoax isn't a hoax. I mean, I've seen polling on this.
I know.
The percentage of people who think that Trump really was a Russian agent is off the charts. Well, it's crazy.
People are people are writing and still saying it is, that I really know it's still there. And because Trump said such nice things about Putin all the time, I was originally kind of like, well, what's that all about? But now we know he doesn't have to. I mean, he just does that. After about a year of this, I said, well, look, it looks to me like he can't even collude with Republicans. How's he going to collude?
Well, it's funny, and I'm actually going to tell you a couple kind of similar scenarios. When all of this started and Trump was out there saying that, they're spying on me, it's a hoax and all the rest of it, I literally just, it's Trump being Trump. And I thought for the longest time that fusion had something to do with car companies. So Fusion GPS, because I'm in the motor cities, I just ignored everything because I thought it was probably a bunch of nothing, and Trump was just kind of being Trump. And then what happened? Then the Nunes letter came out. And that's where it hit me. And that's where I actually got pulled in this rabbit hole, because I worked for a federal judge for 25 years. I know what you are supposed to disclose in warrants, in applications, what you need to do. And when I saw that, I was appalled, and I realized that there was something huge underneath this. And I think it was about the same time that Andrew McCarthy over at NRA, National Review, said, I was wrong. He came out and said, I was wrong. I said the FBI would never do this. The DOJ would never do it. And they did it. And it's actually so much worse what they did beyond what I thought, looking at my calendar here, 5 years ago, 8 years ago.
Well, and
So-
I think worse than Watergate, I mean, by leaps and bounds. I mean, I just don't even think it's in the same ballpark.
Absolutely. But the reason the public believes that that's true is because the press isn't reporting it. And when you say worse than Watergate, that's why I say everyone should be noting that Durham started and ended. He literally sandwiched the report of all these horrible things by speaking of the Attorney General, who came in after Watergate and cleaned up. And the media that's
Merrick
out
Garland
there
is not doing that. Whatever else he's doing, he is not cleaning up the mess that was made.
No, and this is another point that I want to make here is this isn't old news. This is still going on with Hunter Biden. This is going on, and it is going on exponentially worse with what is going to protect Hunter Biden. What they did to protect Hillary was bad, but they are doing it more for Hunter and the Biden family.
Well, he's so worth protecting, though. I think that must be the reason here.
Well, also it worked. I keep thinking of Harry Reid's statement about talking about Mitt Romney's taxes, and then he said, "Well, it worked." Well, this worked in some. I don't know how bad. I don't know exactly how it affected the Trump presidency, but it obviously did.
Well, and there's polling that suggests that if people who had known about the Hunter Biden laptop, that they might have voted for Trump instead of Biden. That enough votes to potentially turn the election.
Yeah, but that was the CIA's deal, putting that.
Oh, I see. That wasn't the FBI.
That wasn't the FBI.
Oh, okay.
So I do think
one administrative agency at a time.
Exactly, one administrative agency at a time. But really, this idea that we just need better men is really not how our constitutional system works. I mean, you can't manufacture better men. They don't. There's no outlet you can go to, and Amazon sends them to you. So
right. 2 points here, though.
Would help. I mean, I think that's what you're driving at, John. Is Margot? Special Counsel John Durham said there aren't any reforms that would help. Do you agree, or is there something we should be looking at? We have about a minute left here.
Sure. So the big reform has to do with how FBI whistleblowers are protected. And I am not immersed in this, but there are problems which make it difficult for the FBI to come out and protect themselves when they blow the whistle. So that is a reform. It's not an agency reform. It's something Congress needs to do first. And second, to your point, John, John Davison has a great article at The Federalist, and he talks about John Adams speaking of that only a moral and religious people can really work under our Constitution. So you're right, we can't get these moral people from Amazon, but our country can't survive without them.
Well, you're absolutely right about that, and I think we need another Ed Levy, and I don't know who's going to come in after Merrick Garland. He has failed to clean up this mess, but the next president needs to make a very high priority of finding someone to put in the Attorney General position who will make it clear to the FBI that the FBI reports to him, and that this kind of garbage is going to stop. Otherwise, I think that we've got big problems, on the way. Well, Margot, thank you so much for being with us on Administrative Static. It was a pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks so much, John.
Learn more about this.